It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Namaste and welcome to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you're listening to Above the Ground podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, our network is going into its 16th year and is listened to in over 30 countries. I would like to personally thank you for giving me the gift of your time. As always, it is my honor to hold space with and for you. And today we are very excited to have with us Barbra Banner. She is a psychic medium. And also, I'd like you to introduce a little bit about what the trance style aspect of your work is so that I don't butcher it from a lack of understanding. So welcome, Barbra. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us the gift of your time today.
I am so pleased to be here. Do you want me to talk trance now or bring it into the...
So why don't you just give a little bit of background first about what it is that you do currently, how that fits into it, because I know it's part of your kind of working title, if you will. And I think that people have maybe a little bit of a preconceived notion about psychic medium and then how that may differ a little bit.
Sure. So every medium is a psychic. Not every psychic is a medium. In my readings, there's an aspect of psychic that comes in and it's usually, it feels a little denser when it comes in. Usually that comes in when somebody's talking about somebody who's alive, who's
Got it.
Not crossed over. And they'll say, I'm having problems with my son. I said, don't say any more, let me tune in. So I just tune in that way. The evidential mediumship is I'm working with my guides and higher self and a soul communicator from the clients, and we're all working together and they're funneling information to me that I pass along to the client, and I'm aware of it. I hear it, I see it, I feel it. Sometimes they move me. I always say, if I break into a twerk, please do not call 911. Okay, it's not necessary. So I am totally aware of what's going on in evidential mediumship class reading. For trance, I put myself into an altered state. So I am not aware of what I'm saying other than the first few words. And the point is to get my head out of it completely, and spirit sort of takes over. I mean, it's not creepy or anything. I don't sound like Winston Churchill. I just a little slower and it's maybe more flowery than I normally say, but and a little quieter. So, and then when I'm done, I don't know what I said. Okay, so that's where I'm in a different zone.
Yeah.
So there could be a few words that I remember, but it's not like I'm doing a reading.
So it's somewhat like a channel. You could channel.
Yes,
it's basically like you're channeling, whether it's spirit, whether it's source, whether it's a person who has departed, and it's.
Right.
I've heard it kind of termed like an alignment of frequency. Do you feel that is an accurate statement?
That is all about doing a reading, is aligning your frequency, because for us to do it, we have to raise our energy,
Right.
and they have to lower their vibration. So our vibrations need to meet for it to be a solid reading and really a good connection. So that works. That's the goal.
That's the magic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were 100% right, lady.
So, as you were speaking, and that's why I love kind of having these conversation style, we'll call it an interview, but I like to think of them more as just conversations.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, as we spoke previously, I'm a Reiki master. So I work with energy. I definitely tap into other people's energy. I'm not trained as a medium, so I definitely want to get into the distinction between that. But I found it so funny that you mentioned psychic and people being alive versus passed over. And the reason that I found that really interesting is I was doing a Reiki session on a client, and there and I got very freaked out personally because I saw in my mind's eye a gentleman with very specific glasses, like the 80s style glasses.
Mhm.
And I forget what his name is, and I want to be respectful of my client's privacy. But
Sure.
I just said, who's, let's call him, Frank,
Uh-huh.
right? Who's Frank? And she kind of did one of these, and she started talking to me about this person and his relationship to her. And I'm thinking this person's passed over. And she's like, oh no, he's still alive. And I was just like, wait a minute, I don't understand. So can you explain to me, do you understand how that
Well,
works and what that, because it totally freaked me out. That's not
it
what I do per se.
you had a mediumship moment there that you saw him, and you felt you. I take it you felt him in some way, the energy change. Um, and it's really great that you got a name. So, names are a little elusive for me unless it's a weird one, like, who's Mordecai? That's my
Right.
grandfather. Okay, if it's
Okay.
John or Joe, forget it. Um,
Yeah.
so you did a reading. You had the beginnings of a mediumship reading.
But I wonder what do you happen to know? And this is purely curiosity in the flow state right now, because I never realized that it was something that you could do with someone who was still in this plane of existence, let's say.
Um,
I was always attuned to those who had crossed over reaching out. I didn't realize it was something that you could see or intuit versus someone who
well,
was still here.
it was a psychic reading you read the information in the field, the auric field
Interesting.
and the quantum field, and
Yeah.
they brought it to you and you plucked it out of
Out of
you
the
did.
ether. Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Interesting.
You
All
did
right.
it.
Well, it flew into my head as you were saying that, because it was a very disconcerting, not in a negative way, just out
Is
of
that
the
the
realm of
first time?
normalcy.
Is that the
In
first time it
that,
happened?
in that way, yes. Yes.
Okay, well, there's probably going to be more, and if there's more of those little incidents, they might be go take a class, honey.
Yeah. I might need to pick your brain offline about that.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
But actually, to that end, so let's flow with the evolution of the conversation and talk a little bit about how you realized that you had this gift, if you want to call it that. I know we can say that everyone has the ability to hone
Sure.
into this, but some people may have a little
Everyone
more
has
of an
the ability.
inclination, right? A little more predisposed, or maybe even a little more open to it, because some people can be very shut down towards even the word psychic. I know people I've worked with have used intuitive healer because they have, like an aversion to that word. But how did you begin to
Right.
realize that you had this kind of innate contact ability?
Well, first of all, when I was about 13, I said to my friends, because I felt like I was a little psychic, I knew some things were going to happen or whatever. And I said, I think I'm a witch. Okay, because I didn't know what else to call it. I was
Yeah.
13. Okay. Then nothing, nothing, nothing for like 40 years. Um, and and all of a sudden in the house was just crazy paranormal things going on, like a little storm here, things flying off the shelf, my mother-in-law's picture on the mantle. She threw herself off and broke it a million pieces, and I had nothing to do with that either.
Yeah.
And lights flashing, fans going. I mean, it was going so fast. We didn't touch it. You have to do a remote control. We didn't touch it. It was both rooms at once. And the light in the bedroom was flashing too, but there was no light bulb in it. I had taken it out earlier to put in another fan. So we just looked at each other, and orbs all over a video I had just shot. I just said, okay, something's going on here. The spirit is trying to reach me, and I'm going to answer. And I took a class, and I saw spirit, and in like the first time I did a practice, like I had never even meditated before. I
I
mean,
know you
I was
mentioned.
like just a complete rookie. I didn't know anything, but I hit the ground running. And then I found out that from other channelers that I'd been doing it for centuries.
Right.
So it seems like they deactivated me or put me on ice when I got into this life. And then they activated me, at an older age and said, all right, we need you now. Things are waking up here. And that all
Yeah.
happened during the pandemic. Um, and then I found out from my mother, because I wanted to tell her, Mom, I'm seeing Dad. Okay, he's coming through. And I said, I didn't know how to tell you. Because she was almost 104. I didn't want to
Oh,
push her over the edge.
right, of
Okay.
course.
That's where she wanted to go, but I didn't want to be the one responsible. I said, I'm saying here I didn't know how to tell you. She goes, your grandmother was dragging me to gypsies and fortune tellers and tarot readers when I was like 5 years old. She was just, come on, we're going. She said, and she had the juju. I said, well, Mom, you're 104. When were you going to tell me? So she didn't have an answer. So yeah, it was like a family secret, but people didn't talk about it then. It
Right.
was like they thought you were a little crazy.
Right. Right. No, it's true. And I remember my and so actually I have another follow-up completely out of the box question. How much do you align to the idea of the juju, if you will, being passed down? And do you think that it's bloodline or soul line or both or either, depending?
Well, let me just give you an example of so if you see a little boy who's like 3.5 or 4 years old and he toddles in and he sits at a piano and he's never really played, but someone's humming something and all of a sudden he can do it. He was probably Mozart in another
Right.
life, okay?
Right.
So
Right.
it's a little DNA, it's a lot soul, and in one of his other lives, he played the piano. And we take those good things with us. We take
Yeah.
things with us. So obviously, I had some experience in other lives because I hit the ground running.
Right. Right. And I know, and the reason I ask is because there was my mother had like seemingly a sixth sense, but I think a lot of mothers have that with their daughters or their children in
Their
general.
children. Yeah.
She always just seemed to know when I was up to no good. That was
Oh
like a
yeah.
thing for her. And I got in trouble all the time. I was a bad kid growing up. Not bad, but troublesome. But I remember hearing stories and talk about, we shall not mention it, from I think her father's mother. So my great grandmother, who was the town bruja, undisclosed, in Spain. So she was, however, the stories I heard were like lights flickering, walls shaking, people went to her kind of a thing, but we're
Right.
talking like 1800 Spanish Catholic Spain.
Right.
So, talk about, we're not going to bring that up publicly.
No.
Sorry,
You're,
great grandma, spoiler alert, we just did.
you're going to
You
be
should be safe
burned at the
now.
stake.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So that's why I wonder if it's in there, right? In theory, potentially a little bit more so for some than others. And if it can go through like a bloodline, family line, soul line in that
Yes.
way
Yes.
and be passed down.
Yeah, I have a friend who's everyone in the family is a medium or a psychic or they've got some juju, the whole family and the uncles and so yeah, it's definitely can be in a it's normal that somebody else in the family it can skip a generation.
Yeah.
My mother surely did not have it. So yeah, it's and both. You could just
Yeah.
be we don't
Yeah.
know.
We don't, yeah, we can't have answers for all of it, right?
No.
So talk to me a little bit when you mentioned that you were meditating and that you hadn't meditated before, because I teach guided meditations. I love meditating is kind of my jam. And I
I
actually
love it. I've
feel,
done it every day since.
I feel like I channel when I do guided meditations because I don't go to ChatGPT and have them type it up for me. I actually just tap in. I'm in a meditative state. It flows through me from spirit, whatever you want to, whatever you align to. And that's how I channel, if you will. So it's not dissimilar to what you do, but it's more for that speaking through for the betterment of someone else to be able to get into a similar goal-based
So who
meditative
are you
state.
getting? Who's coming out of your mouth?
I wish I could tell you, but I always ask to connect to, like source spirit, my higher self or higher angels. But it's very much, if you go back and listen to them, they're always very focus based. So it's all about tuning into your intuition, into your higher self, trusting your process and guiding you to your next best step in whatever capacity that is. Why do you
Okay.
ask? Now I'm curious.
Well, I'm wondering because sometimes I'll wake up at 3 in the morning or something and I'll feel like, okay, I have a download going and I need to go in the other room and do a trance because I don't remember what I say on trance. And I just take my phone and uh, turn on the audio recorder and I find out what I said afterwards.
Yeah. So when you do, so what is, so then for your process and also for the trance aspect, what do you consider, how do you know that you're getting a download? What happens? What
I
experience
get
do you
a
go through?
feeling in in my crown
The crown
chakra.
chakra.
I
Okay.
feel it. It's tingling. I sometimes even see it,
Okay.
like they're pouring a pitcher of something down the top of my head. And then for several days, or once it was like a month, I just would walk around in a body buzz. I mean, I was just buzzing with electricity.
Yeah.
I felt it. It was there, and I'm glad because it saves me from reading a lot of books, which I don't have time for. So
Right. Right.
I told them just download it. Don't just
Yeah.
pile up books for me. I don't have time.
And so when you go into that, well, so there's the trance state, but then there's the meditative state. And are they different for you? Like if you try to go into a meditation versus a channeled trance, what's the distinction there for you?
Well, in meditation, I clear my mind, and when I'm going into trance, somebody's there trying to talk.
Okay.
So the whole point of meditation for me is to get my mind clear and empty so I can just sort of listen, see what I see what I say, I mean, what I hear, um, just to pick up anything I can, but just to be sit in the power. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
Just that feeling of just being floating, just like I'm in the womb and I'm just floating around. It's beautiful.
It can be, very much
Yeah.
so. So do you, and that is that the state that you are generally entering into when you work with a client, let's say, for
I
mediumship
have
purposes?
Okay, I have a little process I do before, and then I meditate, and then I have a little process. I always
And
listen.
only share what you're comfortable sharing. This is
Yeah, I
not
don't,
like
it's not,
this is not a spoiler alert secrets for mediums in training. Like I
no.
just want you to feel comfortable with what you share.
After I meditate or I listen to a guided meditation in bed while I'm still a little groggy, um, and then I climb a little ladder and give God a hug, okay, to start it off and feel a lot of gratitude. Then I go down on the floor, visually, and roll around with two spirit animals. There's nothing like animal love that just jacks you right up. And
100%.
then I get Gumby arms, that stretch forever. And I give all the angels in the big circle there a big hug. And then I high five all my guides. And then I bring the two and we go into a little place. And then we bring in my higher self. And he puts off like fireworks. And I'm ready.
You're ready. And you're ready. And then do you find, and maybe it's different, but would you say that when we're talking about the ability, would you say that you have more clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, depending on how you want to say it? What do you see things? Do you
I
hear things?
see
Does it,
things
okay.
clearly enough to say he didn't like his front teeth. There was one that was overlapping. Or your son's toe is really chubby, the big toe, and it's going up like this. So that happened yesterday. She said, absolutely. I can't believe you're bringing that up. He had funky, wonky toes. Um, and I get their essence, who they are, how they are, and are they funny? Are they uh, uh, angry? And so it all sorts coming in. The first thing I need to do is to well, I always ask client, who do you want? Okay, who's
Right.
the most important person? Um, most most mediums say, well, let's see who comes.
Right.
Okay. I don't want to waste any of my clients' time talking to Aunt Lulabelle from 1820. Okay, they don't even know her. There cannot be any connection. Um, so it's usually their son, their daughter, their husband, their mother, their father, or, fiance, things like that. And then I just go straight for them, and I tell them who's coming into my awareness, and
Yeah.
what they look like and what they are, and hopefully they'll say, "Yep, that's my dad." Um, and then I just start funneling information that the team gives me.
And so how do you feel? Do you, I mean, it's got to be so beautiful in one way and also potentially, I don't want to say challenging, but it's not easy work. I mean, you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with grieving families. I know you mentioned offline, and I'm leading into that now, but how you got into this work from the 3D versus the inherent gifts. And there can be a lot of trauma associated with
Well,
doing this kind of work. No?
I don't feel the trauma unless I get a client who's skeptical, uh, difficult, and and that's where my trauma comes in. I don't know about her trauma,
Right,
but they're
right,
causing me trauma because,
right.
somebody who wants to ask you a question like, what was I wearing last night? Okay, that's not what
Okay,
we
yeah,
do. We're not monkeys. We're not looking for clapping. We are here for a sacred connection.
right.
So those kind of things can get me off track, and
And
that.
then they take you out of your purpose, I think, too.
Yes,
When,
they get
yeah,
me out of my zone, and
right,
I can't be dealing with that.
right.
And it's interesting. Sometimes I'll end it really early and just say, you know what, the energy's not quite right. Let's just reschedule for like 2 days or something.
Yeah,
And then as soon as they leave, I just go get a download from the client. They didn't want them to be there, but they do want their story told.
right.
So
That makes
I'll
sense.
look at 2 pages of stuff, and when they come back, I just read it to them. They said everything was correct.
Yeah.
So
It's a good
I have very
redirect.
funny spirit. My guides are very funny. They amaze me a lot with things that they show me, or the way they give me symbolism for things. So
And may I ask, just because I'm curious, as I had done a spirit guide meditation, I've done a couple. I actually channeled one myself, but I had worked with someone who did a Reiki. Um, she did a Reiki level 1 intro for me, and she had done a spirit guide introduction for me. So I'm just curious, how did you come upon your spirit guides?
well,
If
in
you're comfortable sharing that.
yeah, yeah, I'm like an open book. All right. Just don't ask me how old I am, and I'm fine.
Never, never.
Uh,
If you'll do me the same kindness.
in a class, in Suzanne Geisman's class, who was my first teacher, there was a meditation for spirit guides. Um, and I did it, and I got somebody who named we ask for names, and they don't even use names, but if we need a name, and he said Shaw, and I know he was blue. So little by little I got them, and it's funny. Another medium said, "Can you get my spirit guide? I want to see if you can get my spirit guide." I said, "I've never." That was like in the beginning. I said, "I've never
Right.
tried to get a
Right.
spirit
Yeah.
guide. I don't even know." But what the hell? All that can happen is that I don't get them.
Right.
So I said, "I'll just tell you what I see." Well, okay. If your spirit guide is yellow and looks like SpongeBob with the googly eyes, who's throwing himself, bouncing off a wall, he's going by me on a pogo stick, and he's just jumping on a bucking bronco. I said, if that's your spirit guide, I got him. She said, that's him. You can't make this stuff
You
up.
really can't. No, you really, really can't.
And
That's
it's
amazing. That's
so
amazing.
much fun.
I love that. That's awesome. So that's
You
very
just have
special.
to have guts and not be afraid, because fear is going to keep you back in everything in your life, not
Yeah.
just it's the
Yeah.
fear. Because what's the worst that can happen? You fail. There's no such thing as failing on the other side because it's all a lesson that
Yeah.
you'll have to come back and take that class again, but maybe you'll learn it, the
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. The repetition is the lesson until it's not, right?
Yes.
So but and so when do you get does this work affect you on an emotional level aside from, potentially clients that are not really ready, prepared, or there's that friction from the client friction? As you came into this, you were in a different space entirely.
I was in
And
advertising, but I spent 30 years doing volunteer jobs. And the last one I did was for the city's crisis response team, where I went out and met the police and the coroner on the scene, and the dead body was there, and the family was there. So
oh,
we had to, me and somebody else, or just whatever, had to go and deal with the family because the police have to get information and, measure and take pictures, and they don't have time. They can't do it. So the
right.
city set up a team like this, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we spent our time with the client. And for whatever reason that I can compartmentalize, I think I could only remember once or twice where it really affected me. And other than that, I just say, I am here to do a job. This is not about me, and I'm going to give them my full attention. And
Yeah.
yes, some of them are so sad, and you have to tell a parent that their child has passed, and
Right.
it's but they need you,
Yeah.
and there's no room for us to lose it.
No. No. I had a yoga client who was a retired nurse, and she was just this wonderful, strong woman. Yeah, she was just that type. And I remember my grandmother was passing essentially, right? And I came into the yoga studio, and I was a little bit frazzled, and I explained it was a small group of women. So it was like three women. So I was very, very candid with them, and I said, "I'm so sorry, ladies." I said, "But I just, I was on the phone with my grandmother's facility, and they were asking me all these questions." And this older woman goes, "They're filling out her passing over paperwork, and we're not going to do this class today, and you need to go." And so I kind of did, one of those like come to who moments, right?
Right.
And she said to me something that I'll never forget. She said, because it was in the room with my grandmother when she passed, and it was later that same day. So I went to her. I was in the room with her. She had already lost consciousness. And I just kind of just sat with her. I think I prayed the rosary for her because she was very, very a staunch Catholic. And I got to be with her in those last moments. And I hope that she knew I was there.
You
But the
did.
woman, thank you. But the woman said to me, there are some people that can stick around, and I'm probably butchering what she said, but there are some people that are there to clean up the body. And there are some people that just can't do it. And she's like, and you're the one that's there. And I've been that when my mother passed. I've been that for my grandmother. I was there for a friend of mine who passed over in the room when she passed, kind of gave her the, hey, it's okay to go, and within minutes. So there are certain people, and it sounds like that's very much you prior even to this role, that retain their composure, and that can be that little pillar of strength in the moment for those that truly need a pillar to lean
I
on.
have it in my bio that I'm at my best when others are at their worst.
Yes.
People used to say, "Why are you doing this crisis team and going on, police scenes?" I said, "Because I can."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's powerful work. So I want to
It
thank
is.
you for doing that, because, it's it's not everyone that has that capacity. It's really not everyone that has that capacity. So thank you for I don't,
So
and
it
now
makes sense. I just slipped right into
let's
this
right
stuff.
into this. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. So is there any for, I guess, those out there who might be on the fence about whether or not they have this predisposition, is there any advice that you'd give to other people who may want to cultivate a talent such as yours, or the potential to deepen a practice where they might be able to also be of service to others?
Well, everybody has the tools they need to do this, which is just a heart and a soul. That's it. You don't need anything else. It is helpful if you do a little studying on what goes on in the afterlife and
Yeah.
what mediums do and everything. We all have intuition. And people might say, I just had a feeling I shouldn't have gotten on that plane that's going down right now. There's people who have intuition, but sometimes and many times intuition are your family on the other side,
Yeah.
putting something in your head. But people just seem to think, oh, I can't trust that, that can't be. But people should follow their intuition because it may not be from them,
Right.
and not question it, because so what if it's wrong? I mean, it just, like, I heard a story from a client. She was driving home and she had this intuition, instead of going down the main road where she usually does, to just take the other road. It was a few minutes longer, but she just felt, I would like that today. Well, when she got home, it was on the news that there was a gas tanker truck on the road that she would have
What if,
been on.
yeah.
So her intuition saved her life. And she
Yeah.
didn't know why, but she trusted it. It's all about trust.
Yes. Yes. Trust
If you
is,
don't trust, forget it.
yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I think there is an element of that vibration in this work too, right? So if you
Oh my
can't,
gosh.
you can't possibly do what you do without that faith and that trust in the ability, right? And in essentially the unknown, right?
Right. I have to say that full trust did not come till the very end, because, and it affects your reading, because it's, uh, now when I give information, I just expect it to be accurate if I'm really in the, not if my mind is where it's supposed to be, because it's not me talking. Um, and so I trust it. I
Yeah.
trust. And the
Yeah.
times that I didn't trust, what they gave me was true, but I
Yeah.
didn't trust it. And then I thought, shucks, why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
Because it was right. And it takes a while to understand that it's not your imagination that is making you think that. And imagination is how we communicate anyway. I mean, you see something in your head and you speak it, or you hear,
Right.
that's how we communicate. So it's not like a negative, it's just believing what you're receiving.
Right. Right.
And we grow up saying, seeing is believing. Not in this gig. It's believing is seeing, because if you don't believe it, you are not going to receive it.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. And what I struggle with, and I leaning on a story that a friend shared with me, is essentially this idea of when something bad happens in your life, and in this particular conversation that I had with a friend of mine, where she really believed that this person, it was a romantic relationship, this person was her soul person, and like her intuition told her that she fundamentally believed it. And when the relationship dissolved, and I'm sure this is true for so many people, not just women, right? That it was, of course, the mourning of the relationship and what had not come to be, but also the trust in her intuition, that she believed in this so fundamentally and so wholeheartedly, that it was actually that shattering of trust within herself that I think she was grieving as much as, if not more than, the relationship ending.
And I'm sure she had some tarot cards pulled, and they all were in line with what she thought as well. Because I
Right.
knew somebody with same exact
Yeah.
scenario. And it's really hard to get over it because you are grieving your trust in yourself. And how could I think that? How could I like, start planning a wedding, and it's like our fourth date. Can be earth shattering.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know it's hard for people to lean into that trust, and there's different, I'm sure there's different nuanced ways to cultivate it, but I think there's, as you mentioned, there's intuition, and I think intuition is that aspect that was potentially shattered for this friend of mine, but also what you're talking about is leaning into the trust of what you receive.
Yes.
And I think there's a big distinction between what you perceive and what you receive. And I think that when it comes to intuition in this type of an instance, it could be there was a perception that maybe was eclipsing the intuition or something like that.
The boyfriend kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the distinction between the intuition and the distinction between that trust of the recepting of the channel, the trust of the information coming through versus this idea of intuition, trusting it and it not being correct, and then that shattering
just
the whole
intuition.
Thing.
She was, she was trying to manifest. This is what something she wanted. She believed in the fairy tale.
Yeah.
Okay. As opposed to the perception may have been different for somebody else. Maybe, a lot of people overlook things in the beginning of a relationship and just say, oh, I can fix that. Yeah. But I always say, if a guy says something, believe it.
Believe him. Exactly.
If he says, I don't really want a girlfriend, I don't want anything really, I'm working hard at this. Just
let that be true. Yeah.
It's just, believe it. They're saying it in the beginning so that they can always say, I told you on our first date.
Yes.
I didn't want to get married.
Yes.
You didn't believe it, but we all want to paint and we paint our own futures. We create our futures, but you can't create everything.
No. And Barbara, we are running out of time. So I would love for you to just have a moment and share with our listeners how they can contact you for your wonderful abilities, if I may ask you to do so.
You may. It's bannermedium.com, BANNER, medium.com. And book and click on my social media and anything you want. And there's a lot on the website to look at.
Wonderful. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for all of the insights that you shared with me and with my clients and our clients, hopefully, and with the world and with Divas. And as always, I just want to tell every one of our listeners how much I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing your space with me, and ask that you please feel free to share the same space with your loved ones. For more goodness, follow me on the socials at Above the Ground Podcast and visit my website of airsaboveyoga.com. As always, don't forget to check out my other episodes and my amazing sisters at Divas That Care Network on Spotify, Odyssey, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else that you might feel guided. Again, my name is Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground Podcast, where every day is a good one.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.